River Brady 92 Tango X-ray, we have smoke in the cockpit here. We're going to have to climb. Climb, Ted, climb, climb, climb!
I would be lying if I told you that I hadn't chair flown and imagined myself in that exact same situation a million times. And I've actually done something similar to that in the simulator. But there's a big difference between in the simulator and in real life. Let's see what they do, and then I'll tell you what I would do in this scenario. The guys in this video are flying this plane, which is a Hawker 800, which is obviously a little bit smaller than your normal commercial plane that you're flying in, and so it's going to be a little bit different than what you're used to hearing on your normal air traffic control and how the radio communication is going to go. Check this out.
92 Tango X-ray, wind 2307, runway 24, clear for takeoff.
2307, wind 24, clear for takeoff, 892 Tango X-ray. Alright, River Brady 92 Tango X-ray, we have smoke in the cockpit here. We're gonna have to climb. To come back around and land 2 Tango X-ray.
Number 2 Tango X-ray, roger, and then runway 24, clear to land. Winds are 230 at 6, or whatever runway you need, you're clear to land.
Sorry, repeat that for 2 Tango X-ray. Climb, Ted, climb, climb, climb!
Number 2 Tango X-ray, whatever runway you need, you're clear to land. Wind 240 at 5.
40 at 5, 2 Tango X-ray.
Whatever runway you need, runway 1, runway 24619, whatever runway you need.
How are we on terrain around here? We're coming around to 24.
Now, I don't know what altitude they're at or what the conditions are like at that altitude, because when they checked in, they didn't say what altitude they were at, because I'm guessing they were distracted by the smoke, which usually indicates potentially a fire, and a fire is one of the worst types of things that you can have on your aircraft, which means you want to get down as quickly as possible. But what's strange is, this is what he says.
River Brady 92 Tango X-ray, we have smoke in the cockpit here. We're going to have to climb.
Now, it's possible that they were low and they knew that there was terrain in the area with the buildings and things like that. But typically, when you have smoke on your plane or a fire, you want to get low and as quickly around and back onto the ground as you can. So them asking to climb is a little bit strange, but you can hear the stress level picking up for this pilot when he starts to do this. Which is 100% understandable because, like I said, no matter how many times you do it in the simulator, there is a difference from doing it in real life. So as that stress starts to build, you'll start hearing somebody start breathing heavy. I've had it happen in a flight where you can hear the guy start to get a little bit anxious about what's going on, and you can hear him start to breathe really heavy. Now, this guy is holding down the transmit button because the workload's probably picked up that he's now gripping and holding things tight and isn't really focused on everything that's going on. And that heavy breathing that you're hearing is just an indication that the stress level is raised, which makes sense because he thinks he's on fire, and there's a chance if your plane's on fire, if you're not on the ground within a couple of minutes, you're probably going to die. The other problem is if the smoke starts to fill the flight deck, you're going to have a hard time being able to see out of the windows. And if you can't see outside the windows and your plane doesn't have an auto landing feature, it's really hard to land your plane. Now, I believe this part right here is a result of the warning system going off, indicating that they're potentially too low. Now, because these pilots were more concerned about keeping themselves and everybody on their plane alive, they didn't keep the mic keyed long enough for me to hear which indication they were getting. There's a few different things you can get. You can get too low flaps, you can get too low gear, you can get a few different things that it could have been any of those things, but there will be indications that your plane has set up. So if you have the plane in a configuration where it thinks it's unsafe, like you're too low, and let's say your gear's up, but your flaps are still out, or you're too slow and your power setting's not right, and it thinks you're trying to land with your gear up. There's a bunch of different scenarios. It doesn't really matter what they are, but that's an indication that your plane is not properly configured for the phase of flight that you should be in. Meaning the plane thinks you're trying to land and you're not in the right configuration to do that. There's something that's not right, and the workload increases now with the smoke and try to figure out what's causing that, and now your plane is yelling at you, and that's never a good thing. But that too low is very different from the warnings that you'll hear when you're getting close to terrain, which means you're about to hit something, which is going to make being on fire really no longer a huge concern for you. The enhanced GPWIS, we call it, the ground proximity warning system, we just call it GPWIS, will alert you if you're going to be able to get close to hitting a building or a mountain or anything that's going to really ruin your day. And since all this is taking place here in New Jersey, and this area is full of really high buildings, having something like that GPWIS is really nice, because no matter what, when that GPWIS goes off, if you were to hear that, let's say you were in the passenger seat behind the flight deck, if you were to hear that go off, as long as they add power right there and pull up away from the ground, they're going to miss whatever it is. That JipWiz system is designed to give you time to make a correction. It doesn't mean like you're going to hit the mountain for sure now. It's like, hey, you need to make a correction. And see, on these private planes, a lot of the times they don't have doors, so they're able to see right up into the flight deck. Now that's less exciting if you're a passenger on that plane, because now you can hear all the warnings and the alerts and everything going off, and you know that's not normal. One of the advantages, though, in this particular situation is if the smoke is filling that flight deck up, it has somewhere to go, meaning not inside the flight deck. So the smoke that's coming in there should be able to move out, because usually the airflow is going to be pushing backwards. So hopefully that smoke now has somewhere to go to get out of the flight deck, because if your passengers are breathing in smoke, that's bad, I agree, but they're not going to be landing the plane. So getting it out of the flight deck so you can see out the window so you can get the plane on the ground as quickly as possible is the most important thing. A little bit of smoke isn't going to kill you. Watch what happens next.
Roger, runway 24, clear to land.
24, clear to land. Can we get vectors 2 Tango X-ray powered? Powered.
Number 2 Tango X-ray, if you can climb up to 2,000. If not, runway 24, just off your left side.
Looking for the runway 2 Tango X-ray.
Number 2 Tango X-ray, runway is half mile off your left.
We're coming around to the runway 2 Tango X-ray. Alright, tower, I need vectors for the final for 2-4, please.
Number 2 Tango X-ray, you overshot it. You're just passing runway 19 at this point. Can you climb at all?
Well, that wasn't very helpful. This means that these guys went through the localizer for 2-4, and the controllers didn't say anything. Now, maybe they thought, oh, they're probably going to be going for this longer runway on runway 19, but the controllers never said anything. And earlier, the pilot said they wanted runway 24.
I need vectors for the final for 2-4, please.
So when they were getting close to coming toward that imaginary line called a localizer, to line up for 2-4, the controllers could have said, if you're ready, turn heading 270, intercept 2-4 left, localizer cleared to land runway 24. But instead, they let them fly past the 2-4 localizer and then past the 19 runway. And when they checked in to say, hey, we need help finding the runway, because when they looked out the window, it wasn't there because they already flew past it, the controller said this.
Number 2 Tango X-ray, you overshot it. You're just passing runway 19 at this point. Can you climb at all?
The problem these pilots are having is the importance of prioritizing what is the most important thing and the delegation of specific tasks. The rule number 1, no matter what is going on with the plane, someone has to be flying the plane. And what it sounds like is that person either is inundated with other things that they are doing which they shouldn't be doing because no one's flying the plane. That's either one, or they're incapable of safely flying the plane, which I don't think is the case. They're probably distracted by everything that's going on with the smoke and paying attention to that. But the reality is that always, no matter what, somebody has to be flying the plane and focused on that. And with all the alarms going off and talking to air traffic control and the smoke coming out, it's really easy to get fixated on something that isn't flying the plane. Because imagine you're flying along, there's all this smoke going on, and then you have this horn like this going off in the background.
How are we on terrain around here? We're coming around to 2-4.
Now, when things go not normal, it's really easy to fixate. I've done it myself. Every pilot, I think, at some point in their career has had something go really wrong, and they start fixating on one thing. I've seen it happen where, let's say in a go-around, they get fixated on one aspect of it. It could be the speed, or it could be the pitch angle, or it could be the lateral movement. It could be anything, but they'll fixate on one thing instead of taking in the whole picture of everything that's going on. And what can happen is with that going on and all the chaos of smoke, alarms, air traffic control coming back to the runway, reloading up and configuring to come back into land, reloading everything on their box in order to come back to an airport they weren't planning to go to, you can get fixated on one thing and then just miss a bunch of things. And whoever's flying is missing that, because otherwise they wouldn't need to be saying this.
Powered.
Because if I was up there on the flight deck and the person I was flying with, that horn went off to indicate, let's say you were getting close to stalling. I don't know all what's going on in there, but let's say you're getting close to stalling and I see someone push the power up. It's the same as when a normal landing's going on and I see the trend vector, that the trend is going to start slowing down on the plane and we're going to be getting into an unsafe airspeed. If I see that person move the power up, well, there's no reason for me to say anything because I can see they're making the necessary corrections to rectify that situation. But if I see that they're not doing anything, they're not making any corrections, then I have to say, add some power or bring the throttle up or something like that. So my guess is that this guy's saying something, he's transmitting it because he's in the middle of trying to talk with air traffic control and oversee what this pilot is doing, and he's just got his hand gripped onto that yoke, which I'm guessing is where the mic transmit button is, and is making that transmission there about adding power. He wasn't intending to do that. Now, the thing that you need to know is the communication to air traffic control, last priority. That is the last thing that needs to happen. They gave them clearance to land.
Number 2 Tango X-ray, whatever runway you need, you're clear to land.
That could have been the last thing that they say to them. Clearance to land, and it could have been like, great, they got all the runways. They're not going to be taking off other jets. None of that's going to be happening. If they can see out the window and they got clearance to land, it's their airport, the entire thing, until they get safely on the ground. Now, I'll tell you a story about me, about this same situation in a second.
Ma'am, I can climb. We're stable at the moment here. I just need vectors to 19 or 24 or anything, please.
Number 2 Tango X-ray, climb maintain 2,000.
Can I give you 1,500 for now?
Okay, 1,500 for now. And number 2 Tango X-ray, maintain 1,500.
1,500, present heading, 2 Tango X-ray.
Number 2 Tango X-ray, contact New York approach 120.15. They will set you back around, maintain 1,500.
2015, Tango X-ray.
892 Tango X-ray, New York approach, Rogers. Turn left heading 280, maintain 2,000.
All right, 280, we can't do 2,000. It's got to be 1,500, 2 Tango X-ray.
Okay, 2 Tango X-ray, 1,500 is fine. 892 Tango X-ray, turn right heading 360.
360 heading, what approach you going to vector for?
892 Tango X-ray, it's going to be ILS 19, turn right heading 360.
360 heading, 19, 2 Tango X-ray.
I'm not really sure why they're fixated on stopping at 1,500 feet. I don't know what the weather was going on. I actually just pulled up the weather just to see what was happening there. But in one, you have the skies are clear, light winds, and then the other one says you could barely see. There's light snow, freezing fog, which would be a challenge to land under normal circumstances. And unless your plane had auto landing features, which I'm guessing this plane probably doesn't have, it would be hard to land there under normal circumstances, let alone while you're dealing with smoke and all the other things that they're trying to sort out and do in a very short, very compacted, very high intensity time frame. The other thing I find really interesting is listen to the way the pilot's talking right here.
I just need vectors to 19 or 24 or anything, please.
That's strange to me because it doesn't sound like they put on their oxygen mask. Typically, in almost any airplane I've ever flown, if you get smoke on the flight deck or a fire of any kind, the very first thing you want to do is put on your oxygen mask because you don't know how bad it's going to get. So you want to put on your oxygen mask, step one, like it's like a memory item in most aircraft. Put on your oxygen mask, establish communication. That's like step one, because if it starts to get really bad and you inhale, earlier I said breathing a little bit of smoke isn't that bad. There are things that if you inhale one deep breath of smoke of the wrong thing, you're done. But anyways, my point is that's typically not going to be on a passenger plane. I fly that stuff, but not on your normal passenger plane, especially the type of plane that you're going to be on. But if you start inhaling those toxic fumes, you're out. It doesn't really matter. So one of the first things that I've always done, if there's smoke, oxygen mask on, establish communication so you two can talk to each other, and air traffic control. Step one. Now there's a few different ways that you can get the smoke off of the plane, but one of the main reasons I love the 7.4 is we have this really cool handle for smoke evacuation. I hope I never ever have to use that, but I have talked to guys who have pulled it for testing reasons, not because they had smoke on flight deck, but they pulled it for testing reasons. They said it's really loud and it does suck a lot of air out of there. So good to know that it does work. Other things you can do is you can open outflow valves, which is part of the normal airflow that's going around in the plane. Now, they could be directed to do that via the handbook, the manual that tells you, hey, in this situation, do these steps. One of those things could be open up the outflow valves and just start sucking air out of the plane and getting that smoke out of there so you can see. That's potentially what happened. You could also have it in a situation where you don't have time to get to that, you just want to get on the ground quickly. You can call an audible, like what Sully did, turning on the APU and things like that. You can call an audible, you just better make sure you get it right. So you could open up and manually control those valves and then get the smoke off of the plane that way. So there's a few different ways that you can do it. We used to do it when it was really hot in South Texas in the summer. The plane I was flying had a really terrible air conditioning system that did not cool the plane very well. So we would get up in the air and we would kind of manipulate that system to get a bunch of colder air once we got up in the air through the plane, because the thing did not cool down the plane at all. So There are different ways that you can control that, but I'm not sure what they're doing here to getting the smoke off, because they don't have a mask on, which leads me to believe that the smoke is probably off the plane or stopped or not bad, because you would have an oxygen mask for sure on at this point. I also don't love the fact that they're accepting this vector here.
Turn left heading 280. Grade 92 Tango X-ray, turn right heading 360.
Because that's taking them further away from the airport. If you have smoke, you potentially have fire, and you want to get on the ground as quickly as possible. My guess is things have calmed down a little bit. They're not feeling that threat or pressure of an actual fire, and so they're accepting that. That's their call if they want to accept that or not, but they're going to get them vectors to come back in around, but they're getting further and further away from the airport, and I'd be wanting to get closer and closer.
Grade 92 Tango X-ray, you're 5 from Tulsa, right to 1602. Maintain whatever altitude you can to establish cleared ILS 19.
Cleared ILS 19, we're turning right at 2 Tango X-ray.
For 2 Tango X-ray, runway 19, clear land.
Cleared land 19, 89, 2 Tango X-ray.
Number 2 Tango X-ray, if you're able to switch to tower 119.5.
Big tower 19+. Tower 892 Tango X-ray.
2 Tango X-ray, runway 19 are clear to land.
9 cleared land, 2 Tango X-ray.
And winds are 240 at 6.
Advise we're going to be an overweight landing, 2 Tango X-ray.
Roger.
Now, it's really funny to me that he noticed that they were going to be overweight.
Advise we're going to be an overweight landing, 2 Tango X-ray.
Planes usually have a maximum takeoff weight and a maximum landing weight. This just shows his overall situational awareness of everything that's going on. A lot of pilots would miss the fact that they're going to be overweight. So this just shows things have calmed down. His overall situational awareness has gotten a lot bigger of everything that's going on. The big picture is starting to come back into focus. But that is a great situational awareness call. I would guess on this plane, and most smaller planes, it's probably like 5,000 pounds. So they probably had filled up all the fuel and they were going to go somewhere farther. And so they were over their max landing weight. But I would guess it's probably going to be 5,000 pounds. But it's still good that they understand that that was going on. And most small planes, unlike your wide body aircraft, you're not going to have the ability to dump fuel, because 5,000 pounds, you'd burn that off. And you can always land overweight. That is a result of an accident that happened in the 90s, where a Swiss airplane caught on fire, had some smoke, very similar to this, had some smoke, and the manual was instructing them to dump fuel and get under landing weight. They ended up trying to do that, trying to dump fuel, but in that process, they got overwhelmed by the smoke and fumes, and they ended up crashing the aircraft. So now, what is taught, and what I always plan to do and talk about in situations like this, is if you're in a situation where your plane's on fire, smoke, something like that, your insurance is going to total that plane out, because it's going to be so expensive to repair that. So the plane's already totaled. So the concern of overweight landing and damaging the landing gear really shouldn't be a concern at all, because that plane's going to get totaled anyways. So go ahead and just plant that thing on the ground and stop and safely get everybody, all the human lives, off the plane, and the insurance company can sort it out. It won't really matter. The overweight landing is, you're allowed to skip that as a limitation in the event of safety. So your plane being on fire, that would count as a time where no one's going to judge you for getting on the ground and taking the overweight landing. But my point is, I really like the overall situational awareness for him to recognize, like, hey, we're going to be overweight in this situation. And even though he's transmitting it and air traffic control doesn't really care, there's going to be fire and rescue there when you tell them that you're on fire. But anyways, I really like that little bit.
Number 2 Tango X-ray, do you need the rescue vehicles out there?
Negative rescue vehicles at this time, 2 Tango X-ray. We're going to clear here at Juliet.
Copies. We're going to follow the aircraft.
Yeah, please do. We had severely smoke in the cockpit. What it is or what it was.
Number 2 Tango X-ray, roger, turn right at Juliet. And you don't want any rescue vehicles to check you out?
Yeah, if you can check us out, that would be great. If you see anything externally, please.
Number 2 Tango X-ray, just turn right at Juliet, then you can hold your position there, and I will send them down to you.
Thank you.
And number 2 Tango X-ray, do you still currently have smoke in the cockpit?
I don't have smoke in the cockpit at the moment. We're just getting situated here.
Roger, no problem. Thank you.
Now, all of this happened from start to finish in under 9 minutes, which my guess is, based on the normal length of my videos, is probably going to be like half the time of this overall video. But that is fast and slow. If that smoke was fire and continued to accelerate and burn, 9 minutes is a long time. Your plane can get engulfed in 9 minutes for sure. We do stuff in the 7.4, especially when we're doing cargo stuff. We have situations where we're in the simulator and they'll surprise us and they'll do a fire. And they'll do a cargo fire, let's say, and you are going to just have to get the plane on the ground as quickly as possible. And what happens is you can break all the rules at this point. You don't have to get a landing performance to go land there. You don't have to do all the normal things that you normally do. You just have to get your plane on the ground and safely get off and stay alive. So as I promised you, I'm going to tell you exactly what I would do if I were these guys and we were flying in my plane. First things first, I would have put my mask on so I could breathe and not die, because there is no free breakfast for dead people. And when I was coming up on my base leg for 2-4, which was the runway that I planned on and that I was cleared on, what I would have done is loaded it up in the approach and armed runway 2-4, so that as soon as the plane hit the localizer, it would have turned in and captured the glide slope and start going down towards the runway, whether I was conscious or not. Then with that loaded in the box, I would have dumped all the flaps, because I'm assuming in this case I'm heavy as well, just like they were heavy because they were going on a long flight. So I would have dumped all the flaps to 30. I would have put the speed down to roughly what I would guess that it would be at that weight, put the landing gear down, put the auto brakes to max. And the reason that I would pick max and not just auto brakes too is because I want that plane to stop as quickly as possible. Because when you're coming into land, if you're ever dealing with yourself as a pilot or a passenger during an emergency, and you're coming into land, as you cross the threshold of that runway, you'll see a bunch of fire trucks there with all their lights and everything that's going on, and they might be on both sides of the runway. And then what's going to happen is, as your plane crosses that threshold, they're all going to take off behind you and they're going to follow you down the runway. So instead of like coming at you head on, they're chasing you from behind, right? So as they're coming from behind, if you're on auto brakes 2 or 3, so you don't heat the brakes up, they're going to be having to chase you down an extra mile down the runway. So since you're at auto brakes max, you're going to stop here. If you wanted to do auto brakes 2, you might be all the way down here, which is going to delay those firefighters from running up onto the plane and grabbing you and yanking you out and having their hero moment while you're crying like a little baby. And the reason I would have armed this, dropped the gear, put all the flaps down, and put the speed there is that there's a chance that I'm not going to be conscious. And it could be that I'm caught on fire, or the fire has like taken over the flight deck, or there's too much smoke on the flight deck, or I can't see anything and I've got to leave. Who knows what's going on? So I want to give myself the most likely chance of the plane doing everything. So I've delegated everything to the plane. I set it up to fully land. So assuming that it can follow and do what it needs to do and auto land there on the runway, it will stop. And then you just need to get off the plane as quickly as you can, or at least the firefighters are going to be able to get there and hopefully get you off the plane quickly. If you've armed and set all that stuff up, that's your best likelihood, and that's what I've come up with as my plan. If this were to ever happen for me, I would arm everything, dump everything. Then if I can see outside and I want to take control to land or whatever, I can. But if there was to be a situation where I forgot, got overloaded, caught on fire, whatever, at least I know the chance of me surviving is a lot higher. With the plane landing on the runway and stopping, it's going to be a lot higher of me sliding down the slide in flames than hitting into the end of a runway or into a wall somewhere. That's not going to end very well. But as this guy once said, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And that's true. I'm sitting in this hotel room and I'm not critiquing these guys. I'm just telling you what I would do in this situation in hindsight, of course. They got the plane on the ground in 9 minutes. They kept everybody alive. They got themselves on the ground. They got the smoke off of the flight deck. And however all that happened in whatever sequence, it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, results matter. So even though it probably wasn't great, they probably are going to be much, much better pilots from this, because nobody is going to critique themselves more than pilots. Most pilots are that type A, want to be as good as they can personality. They should be, at least. So they're going to be replaying all of the different things that they did, wish they did, should have done in their head. And the next time in their career, which hopefully is never, that they have an emergency like this, they're probably going to be better, probably going to be calmer, and be able to better address the situation of what was going on. But all in all, I think they did a really great job. So even though one day I hope I get an opportunity to ride this gray dragon, I hope it's never because I actually need to, and it's just for fun. I look forward to hearing from you. Until then, Keep the blue side up.